Welcome to the Krusty Fox, and boy oh boy do we have a lot to get through today. Because, my dear friends, this installment of Sex and the Shitty sees us finally reach Season 3 episode Boy Girl, or for short, the Bi Erasure Half Hour. Peer out from the depths of the closet for a bit of this.
See, when you're gay, everyone can wear everyone's underwear.
That's hygienic.
This.
He's a bisexual.
Well, I could have told you that, sweetie. He took you ice skating, for God's sake.
And this. Help a sister out by dropping a like if you enjoy the episode, subscribe for more every week, and swing both ways by the end of the video for last week's top comment and this week's question. We open this week on a new exhibit at Charlotte's Gallery, showcasing the art of the Drag King. Star photographer Baird starts us off strong by nonchalantly declaring that he believes gender to be an illusion, while making eyes at Charlotte that suggest he wants to shoot her, but not whether it's with a camera or a gun. Either way, Carrie doesn't have time to consider her friend's personal safety. She's distracted by her fledgling relationship with 26-year-old Sean, who Miranda is quick to judge as too young for her, claiming that
his generation has a totally different letter than ours.
In fact, Sean's age means he was born in the mid-70s, only 10 or so years after Carrie, which makes them both Generation X, and makes the Sex and the City writers' room the land that research forgot. For their third date, Sean takes Carrie ice skating, despite her looking like one solid fall would shatter her like a cheap Christmas bauble. Sean is a writer for an internet magazine, which Carrie can't even get Ask Jeeves to locate for her. Perhaps an early warning sign that you'd find a more reliably modern sensibility on an Amish farm. Elsewhere, Miranda returns home to discover Steve staging a blasé home invasion, having let himself in with the keys she didn't take back after he last fed her rarely seen cat. Probably because it's hiding under a sideboard somewhere in anticipation of its litter tray being used as a deadly weapon. Back at the ice rink, Sean courts death by asking Carrie about past relationships. Wisely, he lets it lie when she shoots him a look of abject horror shared only with deer in the split second before they're grated through the front grille of a Jeep Cherokee. Taking his turn, Sean dutifully lists his recent exes. The mention of the name Mark has Carrie's head whipping around so fast you'd think a terminally ill hedge fund manager had just become single somewhere across the room. At brunch, Carrie leads the charge in what I think ranks as the most problematic conversation in the show's entire history. She thinks it's weird that Sean was so open about his bisexuality, like he'd casually mentioned that one of his testicles wears a monocle and talks to him at night. Except openness can't be the issue. Exhibit A, Stanford, who loudly and proudly identifies as gay. And he couldn't be more open about it if he ran around Times Square with a placard in his hand and a man hanging out the back of him. We do finally get to the meat and potatoes. Carrie claims not to be sure that bisexuality even exists. This skirts around an actual, real issue, accidentally, of course, because we're very much not supposed to be getting educated here. Sean's bisexuality is treated like a product of indecisive immaturity as opposed to a real orientation. And unfortunately, some people do still think that way. I think they're called. And that's without even getting to the Miranda problem, who enthusiastically accuses Sean of being greedy. Apparently, all it takes to get over your own aggressive biphobia is 22 years and at least 2 non-binary fingers. Carrie continues her Looney Tunes deliberation back at home, where she wonders whether what she calls sexual flipping is a generational quirk. Not for the first time, implying that her sexpertise is less encyclopedic and more something she scribbled on the back of her hand after overhearing it on a crowded bus. She also trots out my least favourite party line on sexual orientation when she describes it as choosing who to sleep with. Failing to connect the dots that never once did she choose to thirst exclusively for emotionally unavailable men. But expecting Carrie to think logically at this point is like expecting a flasher to walk through a park and not at some point air out his balls. Carrie does inch towards identifying what her bisexual beef is when she decides on this week's stupid headline: Has the opposite sex become obsolete? Over at Samantha's office, her throwaway plotline of the week sees her in search of a replacement assistant following Nina's unceremonious firing last season. I know, I'm just as surprised as you are that the writers actually attempted a bit of continuity. Wowzers. Enter hot young thing Matt, who Samantha apparently hires inside of 5 minutes. Obviously because she's hoping he'll spend at least that long inside of her. His aggressive attitude ultimately winds up getting him fired, but not before he puts in some overtime on Sam's undercarriage. Someone who does get more screen time is Charlotte, who we're evidently supposed to be more invested in, but frankly I've had viruses I felt more emotionally attached to. Bed swings by her gallery with an offer to have her pose as one of his drag kings. She makes a flimsy effort of objecting, quoting her inability to do maths and change tyres as reasons she's too feminine to even pretend to be a man. It's hardly a feminist manifesto's worth of material. Probably on par with igniting the methane of a field full of cows and then trying to pass it off as environmental activism while you watch them burn. Over the hills and far away, and choking down the discrimination clawing its way up her throat, Carrie goes to a club with Sean. There, we finally get to the root of her issue with him. Ding ding ding, it's her own insecurity about not being able to compete with men for his attention. Credit where it's due, this isn't such an uncommon insecurity about bisexual relationships. I mean, it's f***ing stupid, but it's not uncommon. There is a troubling follow-up scene where Carrie and Sean sleep together and she describes him as being in her bed, but actually has him conquer the pink fortress on the floor. Perhaps she thinks that bisexual is some sort of New York code for scabies. Miranda's having some bedroom troubles of her own, signified by her waking Steve up in the middle of the night to start a fight with him about being on her side of the bed. I'm not sure the show was trying to place her emotional maturity somewhere in the range of 2 toddlers fighting in the backseat of a car, but that's where we're at. She does live to regret it, however, when her demand for him to tidy up his mess quickly mutates into him asking if he can move in with her. Wisely judging that she probably couldn't get away with using her bedside lamp to beat him to death right there and then, she instead settles for a look of inconsolable despair on a par with this one.
Dr. Lecter. Dr. Lecter.
Apparently, in an effort to whimsy her problems away, Miranda takes Carrie and her +2s along to what's referred to as a goddess workout. I'll admit that I have no idea if this was a real 90s fad or something the show made up, but I'm fairly certain I'd be stringing together all those scarves by the end so I could drag the instructor down the nearest flight of stairs. At Charlotte's drag king photo shoot, where she looks like a baby Ron Burgundy, things turn physical when Baird stuffs some socks down her pants. We're led to believe that this is some awakening of Charlotte's inner masculinity, but by next week she's back to acting like she was written by Enid Blyton, so feel free to disregard the whole thing. Sensing Steve pulling away from her like a fish desperately trying to escape the net, Miranda invites him over for dinner. The first course of which turns out to be a nervous breakdown.
We'll order pizza. It's no big deal.
It's a big f***ing deal!
She finally admits to her fear that 24/7 access to her will scare him off, despite the fact that he's already seen her naked in broad daylight and still came back for more. She lets him move in, but we both know that her real concern is having to explain the big blue barrel in the corner of her spare room. Across town, Carrie goes to a birthday party with Sean and only realises, as she arrives, that it's for Garth, current partner of Sean's ex, Mark. As you might expect, she takes personal offence to the idea that the large group of young, non-straight friends in attendance have slept together and paired off in various, sometimes same-sex combinations. Her wafer-thin tolerance finally reaches its limit when someone suggests playing Spin the Bottle. When Alanis Morissette, just go with it, she clearly owed someone a favour, takes a spin which lands on Carrie, her voiceover claims that she's
Alice in Confused Sexual Orientation Land.
It's Alanis Morissette, Carrie. Even I'd give that a go. She could even use the bottle if she liked. In the end, she does let it happen, even if poor Ms. Morissette has to do most of the work. Then, to round off an episode of utterly childish, willful ignorance, she walks out without telling Sean where she's going and never sees him again. She claims that she's too old to play this game, but if she was too old in the year 2000, then knows what this is. Welcome to the end of the video, but don't go just yet. Remember to drop a like if you enjoyed the ride and subscribe for more problematic clam jamming every week. Last week's question was, have you ever looked up an ex's partner, and if not, would you ever? Commenter Mrs. Dr. Spencer Reed, which I definitely knew was a Criminal Minds reference and 100% did not have to look up, says a 7-year journey led her to friendship with her ex's fiancé, and that resentment is a bitch. Which it is, but it's also fun. This week's question is, would you ever drag up if you got the opportunity? And if you have, how did it go? Answers in the comments below please, and the best will be used to pad out the pants of next week's video. Either way, thanks for watching, and remember, if you can't be good, be crusty.